I totally 80s 90s kid, right? we my parents we lived in actually in it's like a 2-family home. It's like upstairs was a different family, and then we lived downstairs, and there's 7 of us. My parents said, oh shit, there's 8 of us. My oldest brother, the one that I was mentioning earlier, he's actually, my parents brought him, he came with my grandma. He's actually my first cousin. His parents ended up passing away due to illnesses in Laos. And so when my grandma came to the United States, my dad sponsored them. And so he was able to come with my grandma. My grandma was blind. So he held my grandma's hand all the way from us here. Because at that time, they didn't have access to like walkers or anything like that. So he literally held my brother. I think he was about 9 or 10 when he came over. And so he held her hand here, and then he like pretty much grew up with us. No one knows that he's not my brother. Everybody knows he's my brother. My parents legally adopted him, so I'll always be my brother. So there's 8 of us growing up in a house. And I mean, 90s, real nice kids. We rode our bikes everywhere. We went to the park. It is so funny because back in the day, I mean, still now that I think about it, I don't know how my parents, maybe it's just back then it was just a lot safer. Like we rode our bikes. We were like a mile or 2 away. Like we would be at the park all day long. And then when the sun started setting, then we get hungry, we come home. And then all my cousins, we all lived in a similar neighborhood, and a lot of the Hmong families, we all kind of lived in the same neighborhood. So all the kids would come to this park, and the park is called Eastman. And then we would all go to the park. And then in Wisconsin, I don't know about now or in the other area, but parks, they used to have what we call parkies. And they were like usually like volunteers or like volunteer college students in the summertime. They would come to the park, and there's a shelter there. And the shelter have like water. Sometimes they have like ping pong tables in there. Sometimes they sell like candies for like 10 cents and things like that. And I think it was funded by the city. And they would come to the park, and they'll play with the kids, get activities going. And like they'll have like dodgeball, baseball, all these games. And then the parkies would come stay with the kids all day long. And then sometimes the city would provide free lunches. And so we'll go through these parks, and sometime around noon, then it was kind of like I'm not sure if they're part of the Red Cross or if they're part of the Salvation Army. I want to say Salvation Army because Salvation Army was really big in Green Bay growing up. And my parents also utilized Salvation Army a lot growing up. So I grew up, I donate a lot back to Salvation Army because I grew up with Salvation Army. And they would come around, and they'll provide us like sandwiches, like bologna sandwiches with an apple and like chocolate milk. Or sometimes we get cookies. Sometimes we get like really like into us, where our parents or immigrants say they only cook like really traditional food. So to get a sandwich when you're at the park is like awesome, So so that was kind of like our childhood. We'll ride to the park with all of our friends, and we'll go play the park. We'll play dodgeball. We'll play kickball all day long. Have lunch at the park. And then sort of 5 o'clock, sometimes you'll see my mom either driving, hollering, like, go home, and then we'll get on our bikes and ride back home, That's kind of like us growing up. And then a lot of us were like first generation immigrants. So kind of finding your place, like you're kind of stuck in between this like culture, like, I want to say like a tug of war. Kind of like you're at home, you're gonna be like you're traditional, you gotta, all the family practices. Hey, you're a daughter, you gotta cook, you gotta learn how to make rice, prep you for life, and things like that. But then also when I go to school, and they're like, hey, we have dance this weekend. Our school's throwing a dance. The Boys and Girls Club's throwing a dance. Are you coming to the dances? So it was like trying to like find that fine balance between like pleasing my parents and also immersing myself in the American culture here. There was like 10 of us living in a 3-bedroom house, and then not only that, but my maternal grandma too. She would come and go between my mom's house, my uncle's house, things like that, and to help relieve like babysitting or just to come spend time. So there was all of us living, and I remember growing up because we didn't have AC. Only my parents' room had AC, so they would have. And those rooms back in the day was quite spacious, and they would put like a queen bed where my mom and my dad and my youngest brother would be sleeping on it, and then they'll put like 3 queen beds on the floor, and then we would all sleep all next to each other growing up, and they'll so that we can get AC because it's hot and humid. So we all grew up sleeping in one room together until we got a little bit older, and then me and my sisters and them we had one room. Then my brothers and them had one room, and then a couple of the other ones still like the younger ones still with my parents. That was kind of like how we grew up, and we grew up with like my parents always. There's so many of us. I used to remember mom's biggest rule with my brother, and then we'll go out, come back. It's like, if you buy candy and you don't have enough to share, don't bring it home. My mom always complained about that. It's like, if you don't have enough to share, don't bring it home. Just because, there's a lot of us, and we're like, oh, I want some, and I want some. And my mom wouldn't want to deal with that, That was one thing that, and growing up was really, I would say I had a really good childhood. Like I had, a lot of siblings, I had a lot of cousins. I had lots and lots of cousins. I think that's, and even nowadays I still have a lot of cousins because, the Hmong families are really large. And then we grew up in a really close, facility of each other. Yeah, my parents did the best, to provide for us. I mean, I didn't ever grow up wanting this or wanting that. I did, of course you grew up, wondering, because we noticed that going to school, the kids that were more well off, they were bused into school because they live in the nicer homes outside of the city, whereas we live in the inner city, so we didn't have buses. So our parents, I always wonder, oh, how come we don't get to ride the bus to school? It's the rich kids that had to ride the bus to school, like that time. Now you wonder that, but I think for me, I understood at an early age, So I'm very fortunate that my parents never really pressured me to they never held me back from education or doing what I wanted to do, but it definitely was some kind of hey, you can't go out late, but my brothers could, because they're boys, they could take care of themselves, but you're a girl, you can't go out late, or hey, you need to learn how to make rice, or hey, do you want cooking. Luckily my dad was a cook in the family, so my dad never really distinguish between gender, and the kids want to cook. He was happy to show us, but it was really because I was the oldest. I'm the oldest girl, and then I was the second oldest too, or third oldest. So I have 2 older brothers. So, and also I was never really allowed to go anywhere by myself. It was always if I had to go with my brothers, or I had to have a little sister or a brother to tag along with me everywhere I went. It was kind of like that, and more I think on the safety part of things, really. But there was a little bit of a little tug of war with genders. I think for me it was that I was just kind of looking for that independence, and only for me to get that independence is to leave my family and get married, And so that was shocking, but also kind of a sense I could be free, It was hard. I think at the time my ex-husband, he was 18, I was 16. And so when we got married, he was already working a full-time job because he finished high school already. And I was a sophomore in high school. And so, of course, him being able to work and had a car and things like that came with the bills, insurance. And of course, you wanted the better things in life because now you're independent, right? So you're racking up bills, you're getting car loans, you want to have your own place, you want to go out to eat, things like that. And then trying to be a high school student and trying to make money at the same time. And then trying to pay bills. And then also trying to share finances with somebody. And then also growing up with that person, because 18, he was still growing himself, And he had to support me, and, vice versa. So it was a lot of learning, a lot of I don't want to say regret, but a lot of questioning, did I make the right choice? And my parents were so upset. My parents were but when I eloped he came to Wisconsin and we flew to Denver. Yeah. Literally came that day. I flew, my first time ever flying on a plane ever. And everybody was yeah. And that was only, I think, my second time I met him in person. I finished high school in Denver, and then I went to a community college. And then when I went to community college, I didn't qualify for financial aid. because my parents were both working. And so I had to emancipate myself at 18 and then use my own income to qualify for financial aid at that point. And then also, I guess, wasn't the right, but I didn't know. I think at that point we got a marriage license because I needed health benefits. So then, so that he could get health benefits for me. And so his income was included. So I was only getting a minimal amount of financial aid. So I had to go and work full time. I worked at the mall. I would work at like the little like shoe store. I worked at what we call Overland Trading, which is a shoe company. I worked for them for a while, and then went to work for Miss Footwear. And then when I went to college, I was 18. Now I could get a full time job, right? So I tried, and Denver had a lot of manufacturing jobs, and that's where a lot of people in Colorado, most people, they worked in manufacturing jobs. My ex-husband is one of them, worked at manufacturing because 18, you can go and make money. Like, you're making like, at that point, like, $12 an hour. Back in early 2002, that's a lot of money, you know? And so there was a lot of temp agencies, and they'll send me to go try here and here. And then I actually found this little small window fashion company. It was this family-owned production company where they'll make window blinds and stuff like that. And I remember I started out with them at $8 an hour, working full-time. I was on the assembly line. I was a cutter. I was cutting fabrics for window shades. And then I would go to school in the morning, and then I would go to work at 2:30 until 11. Yeah, and then wake up and go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I did that until I finished my associates. And then I did that when I worked the same job until I finished my bachelor's. And then when I finished my master's, I was able to get a job at the hospital, which was my undergrad. And then I went to go work for the hospital after that. Yeah. I was consulting for Denver Health. And the project was coming, it wasn't coming to end, but they wanted me to go full time. And I would have been okay going full time. But then I was really wanting to explore. So I went, and my next job was, I'm going to go and consult right away. So I got a consulting gig, did that, had a successful implementation. And then I actually had 2 job interviews, one in Dallas, Texas, and one in New York. Yeah. And they flew me out to Dallas. And actually I went there, toured the facility, did an interview, offered me the job. And then same time I did the phone interview with New York, and then the New York offer came through as well. And I was like, you know what? Go big or go home, right? If I say I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna go to Big Apple and see what happens. And so, yeah, I took the gig in New York, and then I literally took the gig in New York in December. I flew out to New York. I flew out to New York with no place to live. Can you believe that? First time ever. Going to New York, never been there. First day I went there was my orientation. And I was living in a hotel for a week. And then trying to find a place. And then trying to figure out where I'm going to move and live. And yeah. And then I think after I flew in on Sunday. I started working Monday. Thursday I applied for an apartment. And then I was flying back home Friday, because at that time the consultant, they're flying me back and forth. And then on Saturday, I got the phone call from the apartment. Said, hey, you got approved for your lease. And then I was flying out Sunday, signed the lease on Monday, after living in a hotel for a week. And then, I moved to New York after that. And then got settled in at the end of 2017. And then, I've been there since 2021. And then with the, pandemic and everything, then here. But that was my reason to move to New York. I got a consulting gig at NYU Langone as their conversion project person. So I was there. I was actually consulted for 3 years, and I stayed on. I actually went full time with them in 2020. I went full time with them, and it was good timing too, because full time right when the pandemic hit. So I got benefits and everything. So I stayed with them for a while. I feel like I've done a lot in my career path. Like I feel like I've kind of reached the peak of my career, and I think that's why entrepreneurship has always been kind of like my next itch to kind of conquer and do. And with everything that was happening on the West Coast, especially in Siskiyou County, right? That was like one thing that was booming. And then I had family like here and there, like, hey, would you consider coming, or like, and then we have family on the West Coast anyways. The family on the West Coast always reached out to us, like, they knew that I was, after I went through a divorce and I was, living life, and then I met Palm and he was a chef, and he was uh, a chef that a lot of people knew on social media and stuff like that. So then, like, some of my friends on the West Coast were like, would you ever consider coming to the West Coast? Like maybe somewhere was more relaxed, like not as strict as New York. And so we took one trip out here and we kind of looked, and after a year of like trying to like understand what was making me happy with the pandemic, and then not understand that we're not making enough income, and we did a little research about cost of living out this way, and then what is available out this way. We got an opportunity here that was financially a better deal because we didn't have to put, it was so turnkey that we didn't put anything in there into starting the business. So it was a lot of just, I couldn't afford to hire a lawyer to help me set up an LLC, that I had to learn myself. How did I get my insurance and my food permit? Luckily with the SBDC here in located in Marica, with their resources, they really helped out with like, hey, in this county you need to do this A, B, C, and D. So I just took that and I was like, okay, did myself research. If I didn't understand a term, I would go and Google it. What does that mean? But yeah, that's kind of the start of that, and opening up a restaurant here. And I knew that Palm, is really good at what he did, and then just being someone who could support him, and then I'm just here to support him, and let him try and do what he does great. I think it worked out as a good duel. When I was 16, back in Colorado, I helped around the New Year. I was on the director of what they call the Yavame, which is a Yang Clan nonprofit group to support the Yang families of Yang Clan. I also helped the Hmong Foundation in Colorado, which was it was a youth program to create sports events and sports activities to keeps kids off the streets. So we would open up like gyms and allow the kids to come play volleyball, play basketball after school, so they're not going out on the streets. So I did a lot of that. So I always did a lot of community work, and I always loved my Hmong community. Even if I lived in New York City, when I lived in New York City, I was actually one of the president of the Hmong NYC for a year, and threw a whole Hmong New Year while I was there too as well. So I do a lot of things in the Hmong community. So it just kind of comes by nature for me to wherever I go is to connect with my Hmong people where I'm at and build resources for them wherever I'm at. Is I think one way of me giving back to my own community. If I can't give back to you financially, at least let me give back to you with either sharing knowledge or being a resource. And that was kind of my thing. I don't know if people care, but that's kind of like, at least for me, I know I'm doing something, and instead of talking about like what's wrong in the community, at least I'm trying to do something about the community. I think that's where a lot goes. Like, you see on social media where people talk about, oh, this community and whatever. You can talk all you want, but what are you doing? And then for me, I'm one of the people like, I'll rather just do the work and do the free work. I always call it. My mom always like, it's free work. I'm like, I think part of it is anybody in leadership role, you have to be willing to do free work, right? You like it or not, especially community like public servant jobs. A lot of times people don't get paid to do it, but they do it because of their own goodwill, And to me, that's why I come here. I love connecting with people, But then also dear and here to my heart is my Hmong people because, sometimes my parents utilize their resources. My uncle might utilize their resources. So why am I not doing it so that I can help them too? It's helping them and helping them, everybody else.